Yes, good afternoon, Rich.
Thank you.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, Gino.
Under the helm of the state-of-the-art series of conversations, we are having again Richard Pitts here. For the second time, we saw him the first time in White Plains. We realized that we did not cover as much material as we could, so we have invited him again, and we're going to be continuing our dialogue. Richard Pitts, where do you live right now?
Well, I have two places. One in Manhattan on 18th Street is my studio since 1965, believe it or not. And the other one is since I became a welder, sculptor, I have an old farm in Pennsylvania in an area called the Endless Mountains. It's a very picturesque kind of farming community.
One has to realize that Richard had an intense and positive career as a painter, and he became a sculptor only a little later. Well, 15 years later, probably. He was doing very well in the city, was well respected and everything, but he felt the need to go into abstract sculptural work. And his love for different materials is reflected by some of the images we're going to try to show.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I've never really left painting. I mean, I correlate or integrate both activities, painting and sculpture. And in fact, the paintings now incorporate images that are in the sculpture, and there's sort of a blending happening. It's kind of happening sort of naturally as you work, which is one of the importance of keep working, because if you don't work, nothing happens. It's hard to tell the layman what, if you don't work, nothing's happening. There's no conversation, there's nothing being created. It's a kind of vacuum, so the worst thing an artist can do is lay fallow and do nothing, because nothing happens. They could wake up and have some realization and start a new thing, but meanwhile, it's like a poet. If he doesn't write, there's no poetry.
But what I noted looking at your work is that your sensitivity for different type of materials makes you create a space where these images acquire like a monumental value, monumental posture. And for example, there's one type of work that you do, which is sort of cylindric, going up pretty tall. And when I see photographs together with vegetables, with plants or whatever, the two items are intertwined. And that's what's really interesting, because you brought life, and it goes well with nature, which I think is one of your loves, right?
Yeah, I think it's important for the artist to relate to his environment. So whatever that environment may be, the nature of creativity is within that artist's involvement. Some people like very natural things. They relate to nature, the woods, the air, the sky, landscape. Other artists relate more to other things, like an inner psyche, has nothing to do with the outside. But to coordinate the inner and the outer is one of my challenges. And the other thing, if I may go on, Gino, is kind of a total commitment. One of the things that artists have to have is a kind of commitment. Without that, there's something missing. Even the most biggest pain in the neck artist, when he was alive, was Jackson Pollock. He was such a crazy guy, wild drinker, you know, and deteriorated into this. But he was well loved. In spite of his being a pain in the neck, he was well loved by the artists. And that's because he established in America for the first time the idea that an artist is totally committed to his art.
Absolutely. And he's certainly one of the top 10 artists of the last 100 years, no doubt. Now, going back to the monumental value of your art, I just picked up a few images because I like to collect information on the various artists. And you see the variety of your work and all the different colors, also you apply color, is this color applied to aluminum or other material?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and on here there was just a quick reference to your painterly background.
Figurative art, yeah.
Figurative art. Then also, somehow I became aware of you in Yonkers when with the quixotic sculpture and some of this work.
Yeah, this was the first work I was invited to show. Someone called me up, Louis.
Yes, Louis Perelman, yes.
And Louis Perelman, and he said, would you like to put a piece in the Yonkers sculpture garden? I said, what? Yonkers has a sculpture
Yes,
garden?
yes, yes.
But I said, of course.
Right.
So that was the beginning of my involvement here, and so 7 years later, I think
Yes.
it's been a great involvement.
Yeah, by the way, Louis Perelman has been invited 3 times. Actually was the first artist I've invited. Unfortunately, he's been sick in the last few months.
Well, we'll send him this video, and since
And,
he's mentioned it,
And I'm doing it on purpose because
yeah.
3 times he could not make it because
Yeah.
he's been sick. I hope he recovers and he's well,
Yeah.
and he will be better. This material is different from the one we just showed.
Well, these are all aluminum. What happens it's the treatment of the material that looks and appears different.
So it's not, you're not forcing it with the color or anything. You let the material per se, the metal, to work and suggest, right?
Right, there is something inherent in the material that has its own voice, so you want to try to bring that out. And then that gives, then it's up to the artist to form the sentences, you know what I mean, and then the story.
I like that, to form the sentences.
Yeah.
In other words, you had the last word in it, huh?
Hopefully.
And, but now, that is totally different, those images from, these are the totems, right?
Right, they were in the library here.
In the library here,
5
right?
years.
That's the first time
Right.
I saw the totems. I always wanted to do a totem myself. And when I saw them, oh, someone beat me to it. And that's you, Richard.
Well, I mean, totems go back into centuries, you know, so they beat us all to it. You know.
Right. And when you look at this work here, and you think, you go back to the Picasso and Braque feeling of
Well, this
construction.
piece is going to be in a show opening this Saturday, and that's at Warburton, U.S. Urban Studio.
Oh, Urban Studio, yes,
At Warburton.
yes.
And,
Oh, Warburton, the one,
right,
yeah.
they combined the two
Oh, yes,
spaces.
yeah, I just heard, yes.
So, and this painting's there. When you see this painting, it's a complex work. What's involved there is, when you look at that, it's summing up all these other paintings together,
Yeah, because,
coming and
Yeah.
condensing into.
yes,
a
when you come after others, you always end up carrying somebody else's message.
You know, it's hard to explain, but you know, you're showing all these images, and I think the job of the artist is a bit like a juggler. You know, you're juggling many elements, and then to make it even a little more difficult, as artists can be, and they make things difficult for themselves, but on a purpose, with a purpose, they get on a tightrope, and they start balancing while they're walking on a tightrope. And not only that, it even gets higher, so that tightrope goes up in the sky, it's very tall, and if they fall, it's life-threatening. But not only that, a storm comes up, and they're in the wind, and they're juggling, and they have to make it look easy. That's style,
Yes.
and that's development.
But
You know what I mean?
what is really important to you, and I know that, is your relationship, your feeling with the material, because that is what I assume now, from one year to the next one, from 1 month to the next one, you just may even try different material because you feel it, right?
Yeah. The materials, it's an extension of your
Yes.
nervous system.
Yes.
It becomes part of your thinking. It is, like for example, one of my sculptures, it's like a frozen thought.
Right.
And there it is. And so we can talk forever about what the significance of that frozen thought is, but in general, that's how I look at it as I've stopped that thought right there and gave it a form.
Yeah, and each piece of artwork relates to that progress in your career, in your search, in your ability to create, in your creation. And it's almost like anyone who's in the graphics world changes from woodcuts to serigraph to etchings, intaglios, and so on. Different technique, because the different technique gives a different feeling to the artist, to the creator. And what can you tell us about these works? You see, they're quite alive.
No, thank you. Well, both of these are welded aluminum. This is all hand painted myself, and it is the kind of thing where we're trying to incorporate so that the base, which this is a base, becomes part of the sculpture. In other words, rather than just a pedestal lifting a piece up, I wanted that pedestal to be an integral part of the piece itself. And in this piece, this is aluminum, and all of these are a bunch of curves and aluminum folds, and it's 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch aluminum. And that medium and that process of folding actually helps me come up with the form.
Right. And you put Melissa Stark,
She was
the director of Urban Studio, next to the sculpture to show double in size.
the scale.
Yeah, but the scale. The thing that surprises me on this work is the fact that, and this is rare, and I haven't seen that often, that you have different colors at different levels. Normally, when you do a piece of sculpture, you stick with one,
Right.
right? So that must have been a special feeling you needed to express.
Yeah, I still have this tendency to want to make a polychrome, or
Polychrome.
many colors. But this is powder coated, so that's pretty bulletproof in terms of weatherproof. This one will have to be maintained a little more often, outside. But the concept was a very loose concept of fire. It was just supposed to represent a flame.
Huh. Oh yeah, I think I felt the flame in this upper part
Yeah.
because of the seeing through.
Yeah, when you turn on the
I didn't realize the title was, or the
Yeah.
intention was that.
when you turn on the burner,
Yeah.
it's blue at the bottom.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And then as it
Absolutely
goes
right.
into the air, it changes
Yeah,
color.
very true, very true. A totally different feeling is in this kind of work.
Now, you're referring to the wood pieces?
Yes.
Yeah, these are wood studies. They're somewhat about this big, more or less. And it's a series of, even though they have a difference in feeling, the whole process of taking those wood shapes and making a series of wood shapes and then reassembling them into a significant form that sort of has a special feeling for me and a balance.
So do you have a feeling of balance?
It has to have a kind of balance which has a dynamic to it. It's not just symmetry.
Yeah.
It's a kind of dynamic. It's off balance, but a whole
Yes.
piece.
When I saw this the first time, I reacted like when I saw the soldiers in China, the army of soldiers,
Interesting.
because they suggest an action, but they are immobile,
Right.
they're not moving.
That's one of
Isn't that the feeling that you're...
I try to get that in my...
That's what I
directions
felt,
too. Yeah.
so we communicated.
Yeah.
Okay, how about this one?
This is a series, it comes from a piece called Conestoga, which was a series of big aluminum pieces cut, and it was about 15 feet by 15 feet high. But this
15
one,
feet.
this one is turned and cut into and twisted and turned and so that opens up another area for me. I'm actually working on another
Not
piece.
only opens for you, but for the viewer. You look at this image from 4 different angles, or 6 different angles.
Yeah.
It's
Totally
every
different.
time is a new image, a new subject.
Well, that is one of the things about sculpture. A painting is what it is,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah. Well.
To quote
Yeah.
a friend of mine, he's from the Endless Mountains, Charles Harbach. He says, he has a habit of saying, it is what it is.
It is what it is. Yes.
So,
Yeah. All right. Now, before we go to the sculptures, tell me something about this. This is quite unusual. What is this?
well, it's painted. It's painted collage. It had all these shapes of collage I make myself, and then like the wooden sculptures, I play around with them. So, like with the wooden sculptures, there's a number of shapes I make, and I play around with them.
Okay.
This, I also make a series of shapes. So this is all painted, reassembled, cut and then reassembled,
but-
cut and reassembled.
And you establish a vitality of movement here of, I guess the red of course is what drives the movement of the image. But there are also those lines and these open, and the spaces that open. That's what I felt when I looked at this. I say, it's doing an assemblage. It is an assemblage when you think about it. It's because assemblage is a heavier material than collage, and therefore it's almost a different category.
Just to make it clear for me, is I try to find a thing, a visual thing, that stimulates my imagination.
Okay.
And when I get that, then that imagination
Okay.
sends me into the next
So if I read you right, from your visual world as a painter, now you're going to a world that you visualize with your fantasy, with what you feel.
Yeah.
So you made a step forward. You're competing with creation and what exists around you, right?
Exactly right. There's two philosophers that I
Yeah.
know. One is Henry Bergson, creative evolution,
Yeah.
and the other one, Benedicto Croce.
Yeah, we cannot go into this subject. We have something to tell you about. No, okay, let's go then into Benedetto Croce.
Okay.
Since you named someone that is sort of known only to philosophers, teachers, and so on. He was a Neapolitan philosopher. But let's face it, when I was in...
Uh-oh. I opened
Now you open a bag of worms. Anyway, you said that you need to think about Benedetto Croce. Now, he was a guy who wrote a book which I think it was about aesthetics. It was Estetica come scienza dell'espressione e linguistica generale, which means the aesthetics as a science of expression and knowledge of languages in general, which is also goes back to major philosophers of human history like Kant. Kant is really a tremendous writer and a philosopher, and like him there were others, Hegel, and in Italy there were two others that were big after Croce. One is Vico and the other one is De Santis. Now, you brought up the subject of Croce, so I had to go back in my memory because I started there when I was 17 years old.
So did I, but what I got from Croce was it's art as intuition.
Absolutely.
That was his aesthetic dissertation. It was art as intuition. So as a 16, 17-year-old, that meant something to me.
Yes, and you know how he says that I puts it in philosophical words? He says it is characteristic of idealist aesthetics to regard aesthetics experience as a kind of cognition. And this again goes back, all these philosophers of the time, they think the same way. But you summed it with the phrase, intuition is a non-conceptual form of knowledge. Mm-hmm. In other words, whatever you know is what you may have learned through books and other people teaching you, but your intuition can be stronger, it can be better, and that's what we call the instinct, right?
Right, it is one of those vague places that we do not recognize. We recognize mathematics, we recognize reason.
Right.
If you went to court, everything has to be orderly and very logical. However, deeper knowledge is this intuitive aspect. A lawyer looks at his client, or the judge looks at, and what's going on is their intuitiveness. And they've got to back up that intuitive.
And you have to demonstrate. It's not what it is true or right, but what you can demonstrate. And that is what art does, because it brings up something.
Right.
So with your work, you're bringing up, making a statement, and you let me feel intuitively what you wanted to say, or what you felt.
Yeah.
Because you sometimes just experience.
You rescued it.
Yeah.
You rescued the conversation.
All right, so we were also looking at, there are some 12 other pictures. These are quite interesting. These are also in the category of assemblages.
Yes, these two pieces is bronze, steel, and wood. And I was out in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, and I visited a foundry, and they had all these bronze fragments.
Right.
So I asked, can I pick these up, a couple of these? They said, sure.
Yes.
So I picked these up, I brought them home, and I thought I was just going to put them on the table and look at them,
Yeah.
but they became sculptures.
And you know, the feeling, I understand the feeling very well. There is an artist whom I've invited, Beverly Cornell. She also started in Florence, Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And one day she shows an image of shredded paper. She picked up from the floor and glued on a painting.
Mm-hmm.
Then I said, okay, just a minute, Beverly. And I went back, picked up one of my photos. This is the brother. So we have brother and sister. We have shredded paper can as arranged, become an assemblage, and is better than a collage because it's three-dimensional. And that is the point, anyway. So now, these are the two images, and then I'll let you say whatever else you think is important to you right now. Besides this work which was done, what plans you may have now for in the near future of shows and work?
Yeah, my plans for the future are embedded right here in these sculptures, or that artwork. That's what we're talking about, I believe. You make a work, and that work stimulates the next work. No matter how that's done, intuitively, metaphysically, whatever, you feel the next step. And that, I mean, look, part of it is you want to nurture your own imagination.
So it grows inside you? Is it comes from here or comes from here?
Both. Both. You got to connect those two.
You have to connect parts of your body and your mind.
Right.
And you grow into the next step, and you go into the next. And don't you realize life is too short? We could do it.
Do I realize that? Yes, I realize
It's too
that.
short. We could work for 300 years. Why only 100? That's what I don't like to hear. Tell us anything else about exhibition or shows that you're planning to be in the next few weeks?
Well, I have a number of sculptures. Two sculptures are going down to Columbia, Maryland.
Good.
So there's a lot of cities, Yonkers is one of them, that have a program where they rent public sculpture. And they rent it for a period of time.
That's interesting.
And they write out a contract to the artist, and it really is an honorarium and pays for his transportation.
It's like furniture renting. I saw that. When coming from Europe, I've never seen that before. So one day I hear that they're renting furniture, and it costs 6 months, a year, 2 years, and it really shocked me. But I think it's interesting because there was also the renting of paintings. Mm-hmm. In about the 80s.
In the 80s.
In the 80s, there was someone around New York that was offering paintings for rent.
Right.
And reasonable,
Right.
reasonable, because now you have a piece which supposedly is worth $10,000, and for $100 you have it shown in your apartment, and you can brag about it.
Well, I can say this about that policy of renting. It's not like owning, it's like renting an apartment or owning your own house.
Right.
When you own your own house, there's another commitment that goes with it.
Yes.
And that commitment is important for the whole of your life's imagination in terms of your aims for a full life.
Right.
You know what I mean? You sort of set down and say, you evaluate it and say, this is it.
And you have to keep it and maintain it,
Yeah.
to keep it going. Is there anything else you would like to tell me now? Because we're probably gonna ask you to come back in another roundup. I
Okay.
don't know which one yet, because we're waiting for permissions for new studios, but...
There's something I could bring up.
Yes.
My work over a number of years is, when I look back on it, has many phases.
Mm-hmm.
From abstract, then I moved into figurative, and then from figurative I went into landscape, and back to figurative, then to abstract. So if somebody was to curate it, or even I curating, and give that meaningful form.
Oh, that's fantastic when you find someone like
That's
that.
it.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a retrospective.
I only had that experience twice in my whole life.
Yeah.
And one person in Washington DC, one person in Bronxville. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. Not everybody can read through you easily.
That's right.
That's because they have to sort of have similar experiences, feel the same things, and then see, being able to see what the one item versus the
That's
other.
right. A curator is has to be an artist in themselves.
Absolutely. But yeah, but unless they have such a strong personality, they want to dictate their way. Then it becomes a problem. Well, Richard, I don't have anything else to say today, but I do wish you to continue creating, being creative as greatly as you are, and some of the past work proves that. And what can I tell you, my friend?
Thank you for the attention.
Take care, and we thank you, Brian, Harold, and John for shooting this video for us.
Okay.